You are listening to the Nightline Sports Network, brought to you by Travis Dever and the Dever team, 386-690-1636.
Welcome to the AAC Report, only on the Nightline Sports Network. I'm Jeff Allen. Coming up, we'll recap Week 1 and get you set for Week 2 of football action in the AAC, including our Spotlight Game of the Week, Air Force and Navy. Joe Miller of the Navy Radio Network will join us to talk about that. And we will also talk about the implications of the Big 12 expansion, which will take 3 AAC teams, Houston, Cincinnati, and UCF, along with independent BYU. Dustin and Sam of the Scott and Holman Pawdcast will join me to talk about that. They are standing by in the virtual green room and will join me in just a moment. Looking at Week 1 in the American, the action started on Thursday night. It was East Carolina losing to Appalachian State. That was a 33-19 score in a game played in Charlotte. Tulsa was upset by FCS UC Davis 19-17. South Florida was blanked by North Carolina State 45-0. And a game that started Thursday night but didn't end until the wee hours of Friday morning due to lightning delays. UCF overcame a 21-point deficit to beat Boise State 36-31. The Saturday games looked like this. Temple and Rutgers played. That was going to be played on Thursday, but impacts from the remnants of Ida in the Northeast forced that to be shifted back. Rutgers blew out Temple 61-14. Tulane had to move their home game against Oklahoma to Norman. They had a late rally, got the onside kick and a chance, but couldn't convert on fourth down, and they fell to the Sooners 40-35. Cincinnati whipped up on Miami of Ohio 49-14. Bearcats coach Luke Fickell speaking about the importance of getting off to a good start to the season.
You know, more than anything, I don't care what week it is. You can get caught, staring at an opponent when it's a different week, in 3 and 4, or you get into league and different things like that. But I think for us in general, the idea is take nothing for granted, not just the kids we have, the players we have, but take nothing for granted how quick those things can change, one injury. So it's about, making sure that the preparation of things that you're doing. And, for me, this is the weeks where I challenge them more than ever, just to make sure that they understand it's about the energy and the execution and everything we do.
Elsewhere, Navy had a hard time getting started for the second straight season as they were defeated in blowout fashion by Marshall 49-7. Houston had an early 14-point lead on Texas Tech, but ended up losing 38-21. Memphis blows out Nichols 42-17, and SMU with a big romp over Abilene Christian 56-9. Tanner Mordecai with a school record 7 touchdown passes as the new Mustangs quarterback, which certainly impressed Mustangs head coach Sonny Dykes.
Tanner, I really thought Tanner played well. The good thing is I think he can improve. I think there's some things we can do to be a little bit more efficient, play a little more clean, but I thought it was a great starting point, and you can tell that he's comfortable with those receivers and they're comfortable with him. And I thought we had pretty good protection for most of the night. We didn't run the ball great in the first half. That bothered me a little bit, but once we got settled in and kind of had a little bit better idea of what they were doing, I thought we ran it better in the second half. And so, lots to be encouraged by. I was really happy with our defense. I thought we played hard. I thought the guys were dialed in. We gave up the big play on the tight end hide play. But those guys really played hard and was really proud of them.
Turning to Week 2 action, all 11 AAC teams will be in play, and all will be on Saturday. It starts off with South Carolina, East Carolina, a noon kickoff on ESPN2. South Carolina leads the all-time series 14-5 and won the last meeting back in 2016. Tulsa at Oklahoma State, noon kickoff on FS1. Oklahoma State leads the series 43-28. There have been 5 ties, and the Sooners, the Cowboys won that game last year 16-7. Don't call Oklahoma State the Sooners. What am I doing there? Florida at South Florida, 1 o'clock kickoff on ABC. The Gators lead in their only meeting in that series, 1-0. Back in 2010, the Gators were victors. Tulane against Morgan State. Again, the Green Wave will not be able to play in their home stadium. They will play that game in Birmingham, 1 o'clock, kickoff on ESPN Plus. First time meeting between those two. Another first time meeting on the books, Murray State at Cincinnati. That's a 3:30 kick on ESPN Plus. Temple at Akron, 3:30 kick on ESPN Plus. The Owls lead the all-time series 14-7 and won the last meeting back in 2011. Bethune-Cookman is at UCF, 6:30 on ESPN Plus. The Knights lead the all-time series 11-5 and won the last meeting in 2014. Houston is at Rice, 6:30 p.m. CBS Sports Network. Houston leads that all-time series 31-11 and won the last meeting in 2018. Memphis at Arkansas State, 7 o'clock on ESPN Plus. The Tigers lead the all-time series 30-23 with 5 ties, and they won last year's game by a 37-24 score. North Texas at SMU, 7 o'clock kick on ESPN Plus. The Mustangs lead the all-time series 33-6. There's been 1 tie, and SMU won last year's meeting 65-35. And up next, we'll talk about our Spotlight Game of the Week, Air Force at Navy. That is next when Joe Miller, the Navy Radio Network, joins us when the AAC Report continues right after this.
Hey, this is Travis Dever, Kai's Real Estate, the Dever team, New Smyrna Beach. Your source for real estate and everything else, New Smyrna Beach. Proud sponsor of Nightline. Call me anytime at 386-690-1636. That's 386-690-1636. Let me show you my hometown, New Smyrna Beach, UCF's favorite beach. Go Knights and charge on.
An auto accident can change your life forever. At Chad Barr Law, we are raising the bar on what to expect from your personal injury attorney. Hi, I'm Chad Barr, and I want you to know that our entire team is dedicated to providing you with the representation you deserve in your greatest time of need. If you or a loved one have been injured in an auto accident, call 407-599-9036 for a free consultation or visit chadbarlaw.com. At Chad Barr Law, our clients come to us in need and leave as family. Offices, Altamont Springs.
Looking for more out of your Porsche? Look no further than Flat6Motorsports.com. They have the widest selection of aftermarket Porsche parts anywhere in the world. With over 85 product lines and in-depth expertise, Flat6Motorsports.com is your one-stop shop for any Porsche performance needs. Whether you're shopping for intakes, exhausts, suspension, or tuning, they have you covered. Flat6Motorsports.com is the premier Porsche aftermarket specialist. Check them out at Flat6Motorsports.com.
And it is our pleasure to talk about the Spotlight Game of the Week, Air Force visiting Navy. And joining us now to talk about that, Joe Miller of the Navy Radio Network. Joe, great to have you back on the show again.
No problem, Jeff. Always great to be on here.
And of course, Joe, certainly, September 11th, it's the 20th remembrance of that tragic day back in 2001. And this game was scheduled to coincide with that at the Naval Academy, hosting Air Force. As far as, a Naval Academy certainly gets some interesting aspects for, games that have impact. You can think way back in the days of, the assassination of John F. Kennedy and things along that line. So it is special when the service academies are able to participate in something that is so endeared to our country.
Yeah, usually this is the first Saturday in October this game takes place. So they moved it up a couple weeks to put it in a spot where it would be with the remembrance of September 11th. And I think, with all things that goes on at the Naval Academy, that since that day, it's kind of hard to believe that it's been 20 years. But one of the things we've talked about this week and headed into the game is sort of the remembrance for some of the people that were obviously lost that day. And in the subsequent years that served in the military and served at the United States Naval Academy, and of course served at the in the Navy and the Marines, and obviously with the Air Force and the Air Force Academy too. So it's going to be a special day, obviously from that perspective, and sort of, I don't know if there's a better representation. I mean, obviously everybody has their story from that day 20 years ago that was alive, but I don't know if there's a better representation of a collection of those stories than from the military perspective, and certainly from the perspective of not only the United States Naval Academy, but the United States Air Force Academy.
And so, as leading up to the game this week, what sort of things will be done and talked about as far as leading up to the game?
Well, I was talking to Coach Hiamatololo, and it's the perspective of if we were all old enough to remember that day, and sort of now you look back on 20 years, and most of these kids either weren't alive or barely a year old. So he talked about it yesterday that he was going to make an effort to talk to his team about the that day, the events that day, and sort of the lead up to it, and obviously the history after it. But game day, obviously they have a couple things scheduled for a moment of silence and some game day remembrance as well. I think you look back on the perspective now of 20 years and sort of the impact that it's had almost on any graduate from the Naval Academy from that time on. And certainly, from my perspective, knowing those names of those people a lot different, but certainly has the same impact that it has on the United States Air Force Academy. It's one of those events that, it had reverberations down the line for anybody that was there at the time and anybody since that day that has come through those doors. I mean, it's almost universal. Those people were affected depending on deployment, where they went, and different theaters of war over those 20 years. So they'll have some special things planned on that for that occasion, and certainly a remembrance as well.
And, of course, the game will be featured as the national game on CBS, which certainly brings much more notoriety to this remembrance.
Yeah, and I think, for Air Force, because the Army-Navy game gets, the Saturday basically to itself later in the season, now that they've moved it back a week after the championship game. And, that game gets a huge highlight from the perspective of Army-Navy. It's good from that perspective for Air Force to have this national televised game. For the longest time since, when the streak started for the Navy win streak over Army, and obviously it's evened out a tad over the last couple of years, still not at the level it was in the 2000s, but the Navy Air Force game a lot of times was the more tightly contested game, was the game that a lot of people focused on, obviously. But it was really for Paul Johnson when he came here, in 2002, and the believe in winning, the triple option, and really the Air Force game was the game that was circled, certainly not only from the perspective it was early in the season, but it was circled because, this is the game that, all the goals at the start of the season start with this one. And so from that perspective, to see the game highlighted on CBS is obviously, I think, cool for both schools, because it really is a fierce rivalry. It is something to behold, to be there. It holds a lot of dear memories over the last 15 years because of the games that they've played and sort of the moments that they've had between the two schools. To see that sort of highlighted, because there's a lot of things, over the last 15, 20 years that have happened, crazy things in this series, and maybe it doesn't get as highlighted as the Army-Navy game, but this is certainly up there from Navy's perspective. And certainly, it's something else that they play for, the Commanders-in-Chiefs trophy. Yeah, and, Army has it right now, and it's kind of weird sometimes to say that. Conditioned for 15 years, it's either been Air Force or Navy. Most of the time, it's been Navy. So it's you do have a new person in charge there at Army. As far as the last couple of years, they've had success. You have to tip your cap to them. They've won those games. They've won those rivalry matchups. But this is it's the first round, and it's this game has always been earlier in the season. So it's one of those chances to set the tempo for both these teams, and sort of you win this game, you really historically have put yourself in a really good position to win the DIC. So since it's up first, it really, and obviously coming off last week's loss to Marshall for Navy, I think it's a situation where it's a chance of redemption, and it's a chance to put the train back on the tracks to get it back on schedule. I think that's huge for them going into this game. So, it wouldn't have mattered even if they beat Marshall last week, but I think from the perspective of losing that game and now trying to get back on track, this game was already big. If it could get bigger, it might have got a little tad bigger for them.
And of course, let's talk about that game last week against Marshall. The midshipmen lost 49-7 in a game they just kind of got behind early and just couldn't get anything going. But I would say, would you say the silver lining is that the 337 rushing yards indicates that things are getting turned around, because we know they had their difficulties running the ball last year.
Yeah, it was sort of a weird game, because when you look at the box score, they kind of accomplished a lot of what they wanted to accomplish. They ran the ball effectively, which they didn't do last year. If you take away the sack yardage, it's crazy to think that Navy was sacked, I think, 9 times in the game. I went back, there was one year in 2011, I think, or 2010, they were only sacked 10 times all season. But they were sacked 9 times last week. You take some of the sack yardage away, they ran the ball for nearly 400 yards. And talked to the coach yesterday, and sort of the cliche of, like, you look at the stat sheet and everything lined up to what you wanted to accomplish, but on the field, struggled in the red zone. They turned the ball over a couple times, and they fell behind. And there was a couple opportunities that they make a play. They're down inside the 3-yard line late in the first half. They score there. It's a 2-possession game with them getting the ball back. So there's a couple times that they could put pressure on Marshall, and they just weren't able to do it. But I guess as you mentioned, the silver lining is the offense looked like it was supposed to look, and it really never did at any point last season. They never ran for over 300 yards, which was almost a foregone conclusion in years past. So they did that. And I think they took some positive steps, but it was a frustrating day because of the issues inside the red zone. They missed 4 chances inside the red zone. 2 years ago in 2019, they were 47 out of 49 the entire season in the red zone. They missed 2 chances, and one was in a bowl game when they took a knee and ran the clock out. And in the opener the other day, they missed 4 opportunities. So they've got to cash in on that. There's no doubt about that. And it's kind of unusual for them. They've had a ton of success at home, and they've had a ton of success in the red zone. It just didn't go their way. But with that said, Marshall's a really good football team, really good offense and good. But they've got to finish drives, and I think that's something that they've really passed coming into this.
And, of course, Air Force comes into the game with a 1-0 record. They were 35-14 winners over Lafayette, FCS school, and they only threw 5 passes in the ball game, which is not a real big shock there. And their quarterback, Zeke Daniels, had 72 yards rushing and 3 touchdowns. What do you look at from that perspective in the matchup against Air Force?
Well, he made his first career start last year against Navy, and it was a little fake early. He really made some plays, and he's not looking. They're not looking to throw. They've had some quarterbacks in the past where they kind of open things up. Maybe throw 15 times a game, something like that. I don't know if he's that type of player. I think one of the interesting things about Air Force is they do so many things from different formations. I think a lot of people think they traditionally just line up an option and they go from there. But they use tight ends. They use a lot of different formations. So it's stopping the fullback. It's going back to the generic stuff we talk about most of the times with the opponents that Navy's facing. And the fullback really hurt Navy last year. Robert's back, had a big game, last year against them. And I think the biggest question is on defense. They have an interesting mix of young, talented players and some veteran guys, and they held back a lot of players from last season because they had a limited schedule at first. If you remember early in the season, the Mountain West was not going to play. So a lot of guys at Air Force de-enrolled, if that's even a word, and then re-enrolled for the next semester. So it's a mix of youth and experience there on the defensive side of the football field. They're a little young on the defensive line, but they're strong pretty much everywhere else. The games in Annapolis have been high-scoring games in general. A lot of points scored in those games, and Navy's won a bunch of them in a row in Annapolis. It's been the issues that they've had in Colorado Springs. So In recent history, if you go and look at that, especially in Annapolis, you would look for a high-scoring game. I don't know if we'll see that, but Navy defensively has to play a little bit better. They got to get off the field. They had 2 3-and-outs against Marshall, but that was pretty much it. Got to do that a little bit more against Air Force, but it's a tough matchup because defensively, I think our Air Force is going to be pretty strong. So, can you consistently? And there's still questions about the quarterback position at Navy, so we'll see what happens on Saturday.
Absolutely. And before I let you run, just want to get a quick thought from you. I know you and Pete Medhurst have your It's College Football podcast, and I would imagine one of the hot topics is the Big 12 expansion, which would look to take 3 teams from the AAC. What are your thoughts on that, potentially, with the conference losing Cincinnati, UCF, and Houston?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think we've talked about this before in the past, Jeff. We came from a perspective of not being in the conference for the longest time and then joining the AAC and really enjoyed, obviously, that experience. And it may be frustrating, I think, would be to understand or the perspective of those schools. I hope at the end of the day that they're getting out of it what they hope they're getting out of it, which is there's a little bit of an unknown. That's the one thing that if you're looking from the perspective of those schools, and obviously you do, there's a little bit of an unknown there of what's at the end of the road of this. So it's interesting. I find it interesting that like 3 weeks ago the conversation was with the Big 12. It's like they can't add anybody. It's not going to add anything, of benefit. And then the narrative slowly evolved to, okay, well, we can add these teams and hopefully we can. So obviously they're having conversations with other people and other entities. There's something there. So, I mean, unfortunately, I think, I can't blame anybody for trying to elevate their program by any means, but I just hope that they know down the road that there's going to be a major benefit here, because I think, a month ago, I thought the AAC was in a pretty good position to add the right schools and maybe make that step up just to be on the same level as the Big 12.
Yeah. So yeah, you look at it from that perspective. It's like shape shifting. A lot of things are going on there. So
yeah, and the weird thing is, like with the SEC, and obviously live in Maryland, and obviously around the Maryland program to some extent growing up around here. It was that move. While a lot of people looked at it from the ACC to the Big 12. Because of where their athletic program was at the time, the money that they were losing and to get into the Big Ten, you understand that. I mean, I see that as that money is there. It's guaranteed. The thing that I don't know about the Big 12 is down the road is that money there that much more significant down the road than what you could have possibly looked at. And maybe it is. And I'm sure somebody's done the cost-benefit analysis on that. I just haven't.
Yeah, it's crazy, and I think lots of things will still have to be in play, and you look at it from one aspect, it's about branding and it's about finances, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's always I go back and forth on this because it's a tough thing, because each school has to do with what's best for them, and I understand that from that perspective. So I'm never going to be up in arms about anything like that. I mean, I'm not in the inside. I certainly know what David is going through, and I know what sort of understand that picture to some extent. But I don't have the total. I'm not looking at budgets or anything like that. So I'm never going to be up in arms a school is going to make. But I do wonder that it's always that. Can we see that much farther into the future to make the right judgment? It's not an easy call.
No, it isn't. And, I always look back at the time, UCF got shut out of the Big East, but then how time changed, the Big East no longer exists for football. So
I know that's what Pete and I were talking about this the other night. What is USF thinking right now?
Yeah.
They were in the Big East, and then you have a series of down years in football at the wrong time, and you're not even part of the conversation anymore.
Yeah. It is absolutely crazy, that's for sure. With Joe Miller, Navy Radio Network, as always, we appreciate it, and hope you have a great call of the game coming up on Saturday.
Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate it.
As we mentioned with Joe, the Air Force Navy game, 3:30 kickoff on CBS. Air Force leads the all-time series 31-22, and they won last year's meeting by a 40-7 score. Looking at the Player of the Week honors in college football for the American, Tanner Mordecai of SMU was the Offensive Player of the Week with his school record 7 touchdown passes in the 56-9 win against Abilene Christian, 24 of 30, 317 yards. 5 of those touchdown passes came in the first half. The Defensive Player of the Week, Kalia Davis of UCF, 6 tackles, 3 of them for loss, and a quarterback hurry, as the Knights limited Boise to 283 yards offense and only 20 rushing yards in their victory there. The Special Teams Player of the Week, Joe Doyle of Memphis, a transfer from Tennessee. He accounted for 18 points in the Tigers' 42-17 win in Nichols, making all 5 of his field goal attempts and was 3 for 3 on PATs. When we come back, we will talk about the Big 12 expansion and its impact on the American. Dustin and Sam, the Scott and Holman Pawdcast, they join me next on the AAC Report.
If you haven't figured it out yet, I love Tijuana Flats. I would love them even if they weren't a partner with us on the Nightline Sports Network. They have all kinds of great Tex-Mex food, and it's fresh, by the way. Made to order burritos, tacos, enchiladas, chimichangas, quesadillas, bowls, nachos, and taco salads. And if you haven't tried the queso, you are completely missing out. It is the best queso that I've ever had in my life. Absolutely hands down. And the sauce bar that they have, everything from wild to mild in there. Absolutely awesome, awesome stuff. Not only do I love the food at Tijuana Flats, but I love the company, a UCF-born company. And they give back to the community with the Justin Queso Foundation. So head to your local Tijuana Flats. Tex-Mex for everyone. Hey Jeep Wrangler owners, have you ever sat in your office at work and watched the rain just pour into your Jeep because the weatherman said that there was a 0 chance of rain? Or you put your doors back on because there was a 100% chance and then not a drop of rain fell? Well, there's a company out there that can help take the worry away and give you the peace of mind to be without your doors. The company's called Life Without Doors. They make waterproof rain curtains and dash covers for Wranglers. Life Without Doors is there to help make the decision to leave the doors at home an easy one. Find out more at lifewithoutdoors.com.
Spice up your company with homemade marketing services from Tasty Gravy Creative. Tasty Gravy serves up a menu of budget-friendly marketing, graphic design, and public relations services customized to your specific goals. Co-owned by a UCF graduate, Tasty Gravy can help refresh your brand, strengthen your online presence, or reinforce your company's message. Contact Tasty Gravy for help with your website, social media, marketing, advertising materials, and more. Visit tastygravy.com.
All right, time now to welcome our next guests as we talk about the Big 12 expansion and the fact that 3 AAC teams, Cincinnati, UCF, and Houston, are slated to move to that Power 5 conference. Joining me to talk about that now and the impacts thereof, Dustin and Sam of the Scott and Holman Pawdcast are here. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, always good to chat with you, Jeff.
Yeah, thanks for having us, as always.
Yeah, so Houston, Cincinnati, and UCF from the American, BYU, and Independent being slated to join the Big 12 now. Dustin, I have to recall that last time we were on, you exercised the very pessimistic view of what would happen with realignment as far as Houston was concerned. I guess you're kind of glad that didn't come out the way it did, right?
Hey, keep your expectations low. You can only be pleasantly surprised. That's my philosophy. But yeah, I mean, honestly, on Thursday morning, before the first kind of round of news broke, I would have if you had asked me, I would have given you the same answer that nope, I'm sure the Big 12 is going to raid the AAC. The Texas schools won't want to take us. Oklahoma State won't want to take us. They don't want to recruit against the same conference, Houston, for Houston kids. And then all of a sudden on Thursday, the news came out and it was, oh no, they're looking at these 4 schools. And then by the end of the day, it seemed like it was just wave after wave of different reports coming out and people having different aspects of it. And then, went from that till literally woke up assuming we were going to definitely get passed over and went to bed on Thursday evening saying like, oh wow, it looks like we're definitely headed to a new Big 12 conference. And so, we said on our recent podcast, for me, the thing that kind of makes it believable, the only reason that I've been able to say more than reality and feel like, no, this is actually happening is just the kind of, less than perfect circumstances, right? It's you're going in as UT and OU are leaving, and that you're getting to go because those schools are leaving, and that Houston wasn't the Big 12's first choice. The Big 12 probably wasn't Houston's first choice, but it just feels like everyone kind of ends up getting what they deserve, if not what they wanted, and it kind of feels like, I guess, this is actually happening, and should be a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, and Sam, this thing really did escalate quick.
It did. I would echo exactly everything Dustin said. I was absolutely 100% as cynical about where U of H was going to end up in the next round of Big 12 realignment. And like him, woke up Thursday morning feeling pretty pessimistic. And I think kind of it was late afternoon, early evening his time. We were kind of texting back and forth and kind of just like, oh yeah, this actually might happen. Like I finally allowed myself to believe after saying for so many years that I wouldn't believe that U of H would be getting selected by the Big 12 to be a new member until the moment the invite happened. I think the volume of reporting has made me a little bit quicker to accept that this could or almost certainly will be happening here in the next week or so.
Yeah, and of course, give me your thoughts on the fact that it's 3 schools from the American that are going to be pulled into the Big 12, and each one brings a certain specialty to the table. I think. Give me your thoughts on all 3 as a whole package.
Yeah, I think if you had to pick 3 schools, I'm not saying UCF, University of Houston, and Cincinnati are the only schools in the American Athletic Conference that have shown a commitment to athletics or done something noteworthy here, in the past several years, but I don't think if you looked at this league, you could find 3 programs that have both the combination of recent results, in UCF's case being, I would argue the most consistently excellent group of 5 programs since 2017, in addition to an enormous, pretty young alumni base, in addition to, just showing an incredible commitment to spending. Cincinnati, I think, the men's basketball history speaks for itself with them, but I think, a football history that maybe I think is somewhat overlooked, and certainly in the past several years that Luke Fickell's gotten there. I don't think Cincinnati's success is Luke Fickell dependent. I think he's just shown what a coach with Ohio ties, can do in that program. That, Cincinnati isn't Ohio State, but Cincinnati can be pretty doggone good with, what it has in terms of fan support, school resources, and just, where that program is in the country. That Cincinnati is not at a disadvantage. I think for the, the 3 of us who, lived or grew up pretty far south of the Mason-Dixon line, I think we kind of have this vague idea of football north of a certain point, not being that good, but Ohio high school football is, quite good. And Cincinnati has done a good job really just getting the best of that state and that region. And I think with the University of Houston, I think obviously the football track record the past several years up to and including the current years, I don't know if I would stump for it. It hasn't been the best, but I would say in terms of what's been unimpeachable with the University of Houston, it's been a commitment to spending. It's been a commitment to facilities. Like you go on campus, Dustin and I could speak to it because we've, our time as University of Houston, fans / students is a pretty neat overlapping 15, 16 years here. But the facilities U of H had in 2006, 2007 versus now, it's night and day, and that I think is why, U of H has gotten selected here along with UCF and Cincinnati. Is just a commitment to spending, a commitment to running an athletic department like a Power 5 athletic department, even before getting the conference invite.
Yeah, and Dustin, you can also throw in the fact that there's a large television market in play here too.
Yeah, I think definitely the TV markets thing is not as big of a deal as it was when the Big Ten took Rutgers and Maryland. I think the overall shift to streaming is making that not as big a deal. But I think what is important is that all of these schools that are coming from the conference have shown the ability that when they get some premium games on television against good teams, they get TV eyeballs. I think national college football viewers know who UCF is. They know who Houston is. They know who Cincinnati is. They certainly know who BYU is coming in as well. Obviously, with their national huge international following, that they probably are the most valuable entity of the four coming in terms of who's just going to be bringing TV eyeballs and who's going to be bringing a lot of just people that are going to want to follow that program. But I think that the TV markets thing certainly doesn't hurt. It certainly doesn't hurt to be in a big market for television audiences and show that you with a major conference affiliation that you would be able to expand into those markets and even get more local support than what you have in a conference like the American. But I think what's also important is that in a conference that has a lot of schools that are in kind of some rural areas that don't produce a lot of high school talent, like Iowa and West Virginia and Kansas, you're getting all those schools are now getting to play games in Houston. They're getting to play games in Ohio. They're getting to play games in Florida, places where there's lots of, talent that schools from around the country want to recruit in those places. So, I think it's certainly a good move in that sense that it kind of balances out the rural urban overall makeup of the conference. And like I said, as much as we talk about, and we've been, crying about all the Oklahoma State alumni that have, gone on public and said, oh, we don't want to recruit against the Houston and the Big 12. But, as of now, they're getting no games in the Houston area. Now, those schools are going to be getting games regularly in Houston and getting an even greater chance to see Houston kids. So I think there definitely is some significance to being in some big markets. And I think it's, certainly looking at who the Big 12 has taken, it's clear that they place some value in that as well.
And I have a little bit of mixed emotions, because there's a lot of shape-shifting that goes on during these realignments. And, first the conversation was, well, the AAC is going to, pilfer the Big 12 and bolster its ranks. And now that's kind of gone 180 degrees. Whether that was a realistic possibility or not, it certainly, was an entertaining thought at the very least. But, now you look at what the impact is going to be on the American, because this is going to be basically a big kick in the groin.
Yeah, I think obviously there's still valuable programs in there. Memphis basketball is one of the better supported. I think just any athletic program in the AAC, one of the better ones out there. Memphis, even in bad years, will draw 8,000-9,000. For basketball. SMU football, as much as I don't want to give SMU anything, they've done a really good job recruiting. They certainly look like a program that's not going to be a 1 or 2 year wonder, as much as my personal feelings would be that they would be a 1 or 2 year wonder. But it's just, and that's, I think, really when we were talking about in our show, we talked about how, among the U of H fan base, there is some kind of mixed feelings about the Big 12. There is some legitimate dislike because of, how 1996 went when the Southwest Conference broke up and we weren't invited then, how 2016 went when it was all big dog and pony show that we all, showed ourselves to the Big 12 and the Big 12 just said, nah, none of you are good enough for us. I think there are still rightfully hurt feelings among the Cougar fan base for it, I guess.
And UCF too.
Yeah, UCF, Cincinnati, all of us went through that same process, I think. And I guess my counter to that would be, I don't hold it against anyone that they feel like that, but do you want to gamble that the American Athletic Conference without UCF, without Cincy, is going to be a valuable product? That's a scary thing. USF is kind of in a downturn right now. I know the potential of that program in the Tampa area. I know they're starting to get a little bit more towards the 21st century and how they invest in athletics and whatnot, but not a great time for football, men's basketball over in Tampa right now. I think ECU and Tulsa have had good teams in some sports. I would say ECU is the baseball flagship right now, but unfortunately, as much as both of us love college baseball, having a flagship college baseball program isn't, going to get you there. I think really for them, it's just, I hate to talk about the American Athletic Conference as them, but that is going to be what that conference is to, I think, all of our respective alma maters at this point. It's finding the most valuable property among the remaining group of 5 schools. And it's not necessarily a, TV market thing like, oh, you're going to add Charlotte and Charlotte's going to, make that, or you're going to add App State, and App State's going to keep, rolling and being a good Group of 5 football program. I don't know the answer to that. I think it's up to Mike Aresco, who I hold him in high regard. I think in one area we're going to be downgrading as fans of our schools. If Bob Bowlesby is still Big 12 commissioner, when all of us see our schools join the Big 12, I think that's a definite downgrade from Aresco. I think if I was stuck in the conference, I wouldn't be thrilled about it. I wouldn't be thrilled about it right now if U of H was on the outside looking in at realignment. But I have some trust that Aresco, could find schools, isn't going to add just to add. I think the AAC has a good commissioner. I still think even without Houston, UCF, and Cincinnati, I think the potential is still there to be a better league than, say, the Mountain West or the Sun Belt. But obviously, I think the scary thing is the argument becomes a lot less clear cut without Houston on the men's basketball side, or, Cincy or UCF on the football side.
Yeah, I think what could really very well happen is that the AAC is going to turn around and look at the Sun Belt and have the exact same stare down that the Big 12 and the AAC just had. They're going to say, okay, because minus Houston, UCF, Cincinnati, the AAC as currently constructed is, I think clearly a lesser football conference than the Sun Belt is. But it's, probably it's perceived as a more valuable entity, certainly as of, September 7th, 2021, as we're having this conversation. It's got a better TV contract than the Sun Belt does. Is that going to be enough? Do they have enough cachet to turn around and pluck a couple of the top teams from the Sun Belt Conference? Maybe some, Coastal Carolina or Louisiana Lafayette schools that have obviously had a tremendous amount of success in football recently and are certainly within the footprint of the remaining American Athletic Conference. So even though, like Sam said, I'm actually happy. I will be looking forward to referring to the American as them from now on. But I do wish them well, and I am very curious. I hope they. As much as I don't know if it's good for the overall landscape of college sports to have more realignment, but I do wish the American well, and I hope they're able to get a couple of decent replacements and have a formidable remaining conference.
Well, then the other piece of this is, will the Big 12 keep autonomous 5 status? That's kind of a potential gamble in all this, don't you think?
Yeah, it definitely is. And I think what is encouraging to me, though, is just that it's as we've known from the American for the last several years, it's much easier to hold on to something that you already have than it is to gain something that you don't have. And the American could be a better conference than, whatever the Pac-12 for 10 years in a row, for example, if that were to happen. And it wouldn't matter because it's about perceived status. It's about political power. It's not about actual on-field results, as we've known for a long time. So, and then I think the encouraging thing is that as much as the alliance conferences were quick to say, we don't want the Big 12 in our alliance here, but they also did at least say all the right things publicly about wanting the Big 12 to survive and thinking that, a good, strong Big 12 is good for the overall health of college athletics. So, in so much as the alliance seems like a little more than, just an attempt to outmaneuver the SEC politically and say, hey, we're going to band together and not let the SEC push us around. If the conferences are at least, reasonably going to at least try to publicly pretend like they are not, trying to hammer the Big 12, then it makes sense to not try to go to all through the process of removing the autonomous 5 status. So, it definitely remains to be seen to what extent is the Big 12 perceived as a Power 5 conference. But, we've certainly seen the numbers. I think everyone by now has probably, run the numbers and realized that football-wise, it's going to be a similarly competitive conference to conferences like the Pac-12 and the ACC. So hopefully the public perception is enough in the Big 12's favor that it would not do anyone well to try to kick that hornet's nest, so to speak.
And maybe it's just me. Like, obviously, I hope that the Big 12 retains the status that gives us more access to the college football postseason than we had as a member of the American Athletic Conference. But I think I'm just so excited for the basketball product. I'm sure we'll get to that even if the football side, maybe didn't offer as many clear advantages as we hoped when it happened. I think if we get this basketball conference as is, we'll get to it, I'm sure, but it would take the sting out of maybe the autonomous 5 stats the Big 12 has being a little more sketchy in 2023 or 2024.
Well, I tell you, let's go ahead and talk about that now, because actually Dustin and I were kind of chit-chatting about that while we were waiting for you to come on and join us. And this was shaped up to be one hell of a basketball league.
I think Yeah, I think obviously the school in Austin and Oklahoma have had good basketball teams. They've both made really interesting hires, and Chris Beard and Porter Moser, who both have a lot of recent track record success there, but they weren't really flagship programs for the Big 12. That, you look at the last 3 NCAA tournaments, obviously excluding 2020. If you add Houston to the fold here, 4 of the last 12 Final Four teams are going to be in this new look Big 12. U of H, Baylor, the defending national champions, Texas Tech, who is very, very recently in the national championship game, in Kansas, who year in, year out is one of the very best programs in the sport, certainly one of the most storied and historically successful college basketball programs out there. And then you have a number of other programs, like Oklahoma State, who takes basketball incredibly seriously. I would just say with my form here, Gallagher-Iba is one of the cooler basketball venues I've ever been to. Kansas State, Iowa State, and West Virginia, who all have good basketball history. And Cincinnati, who has a really good basketball history, is annually one of the top drawers in terms of attendance in the sport. BYU as well. And what University of Houston basketball has become under Kelvin Sampson. I think it's exciting to me, even knowing that going to this league, UofH's conference record is going to be a lot closer to 500 than it was, in the AAC as presently constructed. But, having it be a, week in, week out kind of battle royale kind of league, it's very exciting, as opposed to, the American Athletic Conference, which I think, is still one of the best 6 or 7 conferences in the sport. And I like to preface it all by saying, I remember Conference USA. The AAC is still a good upgrade over what I think I've experienced as a Cougar fan, but the Big 12 is such an upgrade. You're not having to talk yourself into, with all respect to these programs, ECU or South Florida and Tulane, who have just, I think, really struggled to, put a good men's basketball team on the court. You're not getting that. Even the 2 programs, in this new look Big 12 that have the least success in the last 5 years, UCF, don't know why I got those wires crossed in my head, and TCU have both, like TCU spent a lot to get Jamie Dixon there and have certainly done better than their recent history. UCF's one tournament team in there was, by the way, the team that was put back away from ending Zion Williamson and Duke's season. It was quite a good team in that 2018-2019 season. One of the very few teams to ever hand U of H a home loss at the Fertitta Center to date. So that's the level of basketball, excellence in this league that you're talking about. This is a top 2 or top 3 league year in, year out, to where I'm not saying I'm not excited about the football product, because the football product is a definite upgrade over, I think, what we've had the last several years in the American Athletic Conference. But the basketball product is still going to be excellent, and it's going to be something that really isn't diminished by the departure of the 2 big names on the football side.
Dustin?
Yeah, I mean, as someone whose first college sports love is more men's basketball before it is football, which I know is the wrong thing to say when you're in Texas, but as someone who's just been a huge college basketball fan and then, chose to attend a school that had not really done anything of any significance men's basketball wise in my lifetime, it's been a pretty dramatic last 6 or 7 years for as a Houston Cougar basketball fan to go from playing in a dilapidated arena with just non-existent crowds, coached very poorly and just doing poorly in Conference USA to now in a couple of years from now, we're going to be, already playing in a brand new arena with brand new facilities with Kelvin Sampson as our head coach coming off of a Final Four. And like I said, we're going to be playing in one of the 2 or 3 best basketball conferences year in and year out. It's just, I genuinely keep waking up and just like finding myself, pinching myself, trying to believe that this is, and like we talked about on the podcast before, this is really the last thing that Houston, the only really knock that you would have against coming to Houston as an elite recruit, they've got a head coach that has proven to be a winner, knows how to get, players to the NBA. You've got the Final Four. You've shown that it's, that you can have success. You're playing in a brand new arena with brand new training facilities in front of packed crowds that just make that place a really, really fun atmosphere to watch a game. And now you're jumping from being in the annual 7th best conference to being in the 2nd or 3rd best conference every year. And a conference that, like Sam said, there's going to be 0% body fat on this conference. You've got the high end talent in that, like Sam said, 4 teams will have been to the Final Four in the last couple of years. And just like I said, 0% body fat. Every single team in that conference is going to have a program that expects to go to the tournament on a regular basis. It's not going to mean no one's going to ever have a bad year. Iowa State's had a couple of bad years recently. It saddens me to say. TCU and UCF and, some of these, not every school is obviously going to get to go to the NCAA tournament every single year. But there is going to be no programs that don't take basketball really, really seriously, that aren't recruiting at a high level in this conference, that aren't putting competitive teams out there. It is battle royale, like Sam said, is probably the right term, and it would be almost impossible to overstate how excited I am to watch Houston start competing in that conference.
Yeah, that's definitely going to be quite the mountain to climb, and you win that conference. That's a big trophy to put on the case. That's for sure. So
absolutely. So
competitive wise, now this all is contingent on when our teams go to the Big 12 and when Texas and Oklahoma go to the SEC, there could be some overlap here, some potential matchups on the table. I know you guys would like to see a Houston-Texas matchup in Houston. What do you think those prospects are?
I'll believe it when I see it. I'll believe Houston's playing Texas in football when I see it, when the game is on the schedule. It is pretty hard for me to imagine. But I mean, like you said, it certainly seems like all the reporting out there is that these American Athletic Conference teams expect to join the conference in the summer of 2023. So they'd be there for the 2023 football season. And thus far, the school in Austin and OU have both said that they intend to hang around until the grant of rights expires in 2025. And there's already going to be a hefty exit fee, even leaving in 2025, which is going to be, my understanding, even greater if they do breach that grant of rights. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens, because you've got to think that UT and OU are just not dying to be in the conference with the Big 12, with all these 4 new teams that they didn't probably want or vote for, and just having these weird couple. And certainly, I can guarantee that the school in Austin does not want to send their football team into Houston to play a game at TDECU Stadium, because there's all kinds of hurt feelings there and stuff that we probably don't need to go into. But it is certainly fascinating, because the Big 12 is going to be in absolutely no hurry to help UT and OU out as they're leaving the conference, and they're going to be in no hurry to cut them a more favorable deal just because they don't want to play those teams that are coming in. So just watching those schools, and that's what really just would be beautiful to me, not only just getting the game in Houston if it were to happen, but just knowing that it happened because the other 8 schools stood up with one voice and just gave one giant middle finger to the 2 departing schools and made them do those things. So it doesn't feel like good things happen like that in college football. But if you had asked me on Thursday morning, I would have said there's no way Houston's going into the Big 12. So I'll keep my fingers crossed, but I'll believe it when I see it.
I would say I'm as cynical as Dustin on that. I'll just add, I think all of us would be just stunned at the amount of money that I think that the school in Austin would pay not to play a game on campus at the University of Houston. I feel like it would be somewhere in the low 8 figures to just get out of that, just because they have, I think an almost unlimited amount of money to where they can throw 8 figures at something. And for them, it's just like, I don't know, us spending $100 at the grocery store or something like that. But I don't think we should underestimate the amount of money that the Longhorns will throw at this situation to make it not have them play the University of Houston in football in the city of Houston.
Well, I'll give you guys some perspective from a UCF point of view. Years ago, UCF wanted to be in the Big East, but South Florida blocked all avenues into that venue. So leaving them behind is certainly going to be a sweet taste, a perfect dessert for us on that front, because it was often thought that UCF and South Florida would be a package deal in any move to a Power 5 conference. And you see where they are now, and you see where UCF is now. And it is, night and day. And so you think about that fact, and then, it kind of worked out for us if we didn't join the Big East at that time, because now, obviously the Big East of football no longer exists, and we got into the American probably at the right juncture.
Yeah, I can't imagine. I think Dustin shares this with me. I'm very happy, at least for the short term, because I'd venture to guess that if there's any subsequent rounds of realignment, SMU is probably going to be high in the list, just because they're a well-resourced, at least in terms of having a rich alumni school in a major metropolitan area. But the idea of leaving them behind, at least for an extended period of time, is quite satisfying. And that's with none of the stuff you mentioned of, USF doing everything they could to keep UCF out of the Big East, 15, 20 years ago, and everything that comes with that. And just, seeing seeing USF kind of just crater in the big revenue sports right now. I'd imagine the last 5 years have been pretty kind to being a UCF fan. Not every experience is perfect, but it's been quite an awesome last 5 years for you guys. But I can't imagine much better than seeing a hated rival get left behind. I feel like it even tops like an on-field result. Obviously, the sport's what we care about here, but seeing an institution that blocked UCF from getting to where they are now and still getting to where that program's gone to. I'm someone who generally has positive feelings towards the Bulls. I am Switzerland in the war on I-4, so to speak. But yeah, I can objectively look at that and be like, yeah, I get why they're pretty satisfied with that right now.
Dustin?
Yeah, I think the only thing I would push back on Sam's, I do feel like cautiously optimistic that SMU is going to get left out here. I don't think that.
In this round for sure.
I was going to say, I think even if the Big 12 expands with a couple more teams, I feel like there's enough sense that 4 teams in Texas is probably already enough. 1 team in the Metroplex is already probably enough, especially given that Texas Tech has a huge alumni base in Dallas and kind of is a very maybe a very extended Metroplex team in their own right. So I don't think the Big 12 needs another school there. But that is definitely, yes, one of the sweetest things about this, realignment, and one of the things we talked about on the podcast, is if you're feeling as a Houston fan at all bad about going into the Big 12 conference, the conference that you just hate more than any other conference in the country, it's just, you're leaving SMU behind and you're picking up 3 new in-state rivals in Tech, TCU, and Baylor, who Houston has just all kinds of historical, animosity with. This is a point that we've made a few times now, and it's just that, every Houston fan knows somebody who went to Texas Tech. Every Houston fan knows somebody who went to TCU and who went to Baylor, and probably someone who went to Oklahoma State. No one knows anyone who went to, because they're small private institutions. Even the most local schools in the American to Houston are SMU, Tulane, and Tulsa, a bunch of small private schools. And I feel like the average Houston fan knows 0 to 1 people that went to those schools. So just joining this conference is not only satisfying in who Houston is leaving behind, but now who Houston is going to get some regular matchups with, matchups that just have that automatic implied, you don't have to hype those matchups up. They hype themselves up the way that, matchups in the American rarely did.
And I was going to add, when we talked to we talked to a UConn guy in the 2019 season. I think it was Amon Kidwai Dustin. It was the last time we had him on our show. And we kind of asked him, like, what's the appeal of going to Big East for you guys? And he said something very similar to what Dustin just said. Like, look, the league's a decent sports league, but up here in the Northeast, we don't really know a lot of, Houston fans or Tulsa fans or, Tulane fans, but we know a lot of, St. John's and Villanova and all those schools. And that's kind of what it is with the Big 12. It's not a perfect landing spot, but it certainly gets a schedule that has a lot more pop to this fan base and a lot more, I guess, local rivalry.
Well, and of course you said UConn, and isn't that like the worst sports program going right now with football? Oh my God, what a train wreck!
This is true.
Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. And this also brings up those interesting things. When you're going to leave a conference, but still staying in the conference you're currently in, that's kind of like, inviting, having your ex-wife still live with you.
Yeah. I mean, I guess we're sort of, I don't know. We've sort of gotten tough skin because, as soon as the Holgorsen hire was made, which, that's, it's not going entirely swimmingly so far, 2+ years in, but, heard so much about how Houston's the school that, we fire coaches for 8 and 4, and these guys are trying to be new money and stuff like that. So, and UCF too. I mean, UCF with the 2017 season just getting heinously left out of the sports postseason discussion. Getting some pushback from the established power. So I don't think UCF or Houston fans, if there's any additional target on our school's back from this move, I don't think having the spotlight on you is going to be a very different experience for either of our fan bases.
All right, well, guys, thank you so much for taking the time. Just got a quick thought on your opening game with Texas Tech, which I guess was a pseudo Big 12 opener.
I would just add. Sorry, Dustin. I'll just add. We were promised a lot of progress from the third-year quarterback, and we didn't see a whole lot of it on Saturday. Dustin, sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say it was, one quarter of just some beautiful football, and then pretty much just about everything went wrong after that. So definitely, I think that warms the seat under Dana Holgorsen more than a little bit. And honestly, probably the fact that Houston is heading into the Big 12 warms the seat under Dana Holgorsen a little bit because the school is not going to want to go into a conference, take a step up in conference prestige with a coach who is having trouble getting the team competitive at the American Athletic Conference level. But also the only thing that maybe would have held Houston back from making a move would have been, the financials of getting out from Holgorsen's contract. And if you are planning on increasing your TV money in a significant way in the immediate future, maybe that makes you feel a little bit more financially secure to go ahead and make a move there. So I think all of the news from the past week probably hasn't been really good for Dana Holgorsen's job security.
All right. Well, Dustin, Sam, as always, appreciate the time. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Jeff. Always fun.
Great as always. Thank you so much, Jeff.
Turning now to women's soccer, our offensive player of the week was Kristen Scott of UCF, scored both goals in the Knights' 2-1 victory over number 7 Penn State on Sunday night, scoring in the 26th minute and in the 62nd minute to break a 1-1 tie. It was UCF's first top 10 win since 2017. The defensive player of the week, Kim Sanford of East Carolina, led the Pirate defense, allowed only 3 shots on goal in shutout wins over Campbell and VCU. Goalkeeper of the week, Michaela Gracia recorded two clean sheets in a pair of wins for the Cougars over Louisiana and Lamar. Men's soccer, the offensive player of the week, Malik Henry Scott of Tulsa, exploded for a 3-point day against Missouri State, guiding the Golden Current came to that dominant 3-0 victory. Sent the primary assist across to Ben Barkley in the match-winning goal in the 20th minute to give Tulsa a 1-0 advantage, and then split the Missouri State defense on an unassisted run and buried his first goal of the year to cap that scoring at 3-0. The defensive player of the week, Kyron Chambron Pinho of SMU, first career defensive player of the week award on the strength of a 3-1 win for number 9 SMU over Houston Baptist. And from week 1, which I missed giving you last week, the offensive player of the week was Gabriel Costa of SMU, and the defensive player of the week was Mariana Fazio of Tulsa. Volleyball offensive player of the week, Sabrina Bianco of Memphis, as they are atop the American at 6-0, with the Tigers yet to drop a set through 2 weeks of play this season. Bianco logged 39 assists, and the Tigers hit 308 as a squad against Missouri State on September 3rd, and later in the day against Little Rock, narrowly missed a double-double, 37 assists and 8 digs. The defensive player of the week, Maria Milan of Cincinnati, and she was an all-around star with 70 digs, 5.3 digs per set, while adding the third most points per set in the league at 4.50. Had 25 digs against Notre Dame in a 4-set win against the Irish, and then against Bowling Green, 32 digs, 3 total blocks to guide that victory. Cross country, men's athlete of the week is Alex Sandusky of Cincinnati, dominated the men's 6K to kick off his 2021 season at the Butler Twilight in Carmel, Indiana. And he was able to navigate the course in 17:42.0 to take the individual title and also lift Cincinnati to a team victory. The women's athlete of the week, Yasmin Wright of Wichita State. She shined in the first 2021 meet for them in the women's 5K at the JK Gold Classic in Augusta, Kansas, with a time of 17:34.1, the only athlete to run sub-17 minutes in the event to win the individual meet and lift the Shockers to the team triumph there. And that'll wrap up this week's show. As always, please follow me on Twitter at JeffAllen_88 and follow the Nightline Sports Network at UCF_Nightline. This has been the AAC Report, only on the Nightline Sports Network. I'm Jeff Allen. Thanks for listening.